Right, we're here. We're online. We're live.
Oh my god, I can't believe it. We're
Yep,
back again.
here we go. One last time for this season of Arcane, at least.
Mhm.
Anyway, calm it. It's fine. You got another hour or so. That's it, and then you're released into the wild.
Yeah, I get to cook dinner today. It's great.
Yeah,
That's my goal.
yeah. So,
Um,
welcome. This is if you're seeing this on Twitch, this is our live stream of the final thoughts of season one of Arcane with your boy Ryan and also your boy Duncan.
that's me. I'm the second one.
He's the other boy. See, he does exist and he does have full character development. It is an absolute thing. What you see is what you get. There are no plot holes. Everything's fine. Right, yeah. So we've done our long, big breakdowns of Arcane,
Yeah, what
an
was that
act at a
like
time.
14 or 15 hours of content or
5 +
something?
4 + 4. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and that's that. If you want to go and look at them, you can do. We appreciate any constructive criticism. I'm just going to say that out there right now.
Absolutely.
Constructive criticism.
That doesn't constructive. Let's be clear about what that means.
Hmm.
Constructive does not mean positive. You don't have to agree with us.
No,
That's not what that means. Um,
and let's be honest with the way this is going as well. If you are going to offer an opinion, you are going to be disagreeing with one or the other of us.
Probably. I mean, yeah, we got a person who really liked the show, a person who's the other one.
Yeah. So that's fine, and because we're doing this on Twitch, you can always just go into the chat, and if we find it, we can all do it. We've got
If
one
you
response
happen
from
to be,
Stephanie.
yeah, if you happen to be for some reason on Twitch looking specifically for reviews of Arcane, and you happen to join our chat, feel free to talk to us live.
Yeah,
We're on
absolutely.
it.
We appreciate that. Tell us what you liked and what you didn't of the show or of the videos, one or the other. That's absolutely fine.
I
Um,
one thing I've noticed about myself, I'm gonna try to avoid it. I look down a lot at my hands and at my desk when I'm talking. I don't know
mm,
if that. I'm gonna try to avoid that. I'm gonna try to at least try to keep level for the most part.
Fair enough. That's fine. Where else? What else have we got to sort of discuss? Oh yeah, there's going to be a thing. The way this is sort of worked, there may have been some softening or hardening of opinions in the past week that have come up, but generally, what we've discussed is what is going to be the case. And this sort of last hour is just to, I don't want to say justify, but to clarify on the why we've come to the decisions that we have. And just to also look at the whole show as just in one go now, as opposed to an act at a time, and try and see what we could hope for next season. Because we made our views pretty clear. I've gone on the idea of, and this was actually a response to one of the YouTube comments that we had. Is like, unlike what Silco tells Jinx, Arcane. And this is my personal opinion overall. Arcane is not perfect. It's not. Let's just
Yeah.
just throw it out there. We might as well just do this overall opinion now, and then we'll look at what Duncan had set out, which is sort
We're
of
at a point we're
seeing
at a
good and
point in
bad
the
stuff in those things.
discourse we're at a point in the discourse where there are actually people out there who review the show at like a 7 or 8 out of 10, and they're getting in trouble for not rating it higher. And that's a problem. That's
Yeah.
problematic because I know for a fact that it's not that high in the first
Hmm.
place, and it's that I I think that people need to chill out and actually try to work through the problem rather than just try to dismiss it. We need to
Yeah.
talk. We
Just
need to
just dis-
talk.
just to dismiss it out as League of Legends hatred, or just trying to be contrarian for the sake of contrarianism. That's not the case, and we've said that multiple times
I
through the big
I made it
videos, and we're saying it
I
here
made it
again.
I tried to make it as clear as I could, but I'll reiterate in case this is like, too late in the videos or too scattered across the three videos. Now that we're like 10, not even, well, we're 10 minutes into this video,
Hmm.
I'll make it clear, nice and early. I did not come into Arcane just to be a spoil sport and be
Hmm.
mean spirited and angry. I really, really wanted to like Arcane and find as many things about Arcane to like as possible. I was not, you know, looking at this and be like, "Oh, this is a popular thing. I get to shit on it and get a whole bunch of views." This is like I really up until the end of episode 3, in my writing my notes for it, I did not know at all the level of popularity that Arcane had. I
Mm.
not a clue. I completely blocked out all outside information related to Arcane. All of those thoughts were completely independently generated with my own human brain. Um,
Human brain, as
and
opposed to
my
a
lizard
razor thin
brain.
brain. Yeah.
Yeah, my lizard brain. Yeah, but
I mean,
yeah, no,
to say on the idea that is that us going in to hate something is the complete antithesis of what Immaterial Gamers is about. For God's sake, a lot of what we do, if you ever see it or watch it, it's just us wanting to have fun with an experience, and that's, to be fair, that's the same thing that we went into Arcane initially to look for,
yeah,
and then look at it a more critical eye, and I'd say we did that.
yeah, that's I did my best. I really did. You know, it is what it is. I can't, unless I get into a really compelling argument with somebody who's really thoroughly gone over the show and has really strong, specific, well substantiated points that
Mm,
contradict my current viewpoint, I doubt that things are going to change.
mm,
Like I've had my opinion changed on things before. I used to think Star Wars: The Force Awakens was really good, and then I found someone who was very very smart and took a very very long time to tell me why it isn't.
mm,
And now quite I'm very much in the other camp. He did it. He convinced me, and that's great.
mm.
Just because someone convinced you to dislike something, that doesn't mean your life has been lessened in quality. It's
No,
good to
it's
be able to change your. It's very good to be able to change your opinion on things. That's like a very healthy, normal, like mental process to go through.
mm.
It shows that you're thinking and that you're engaging with your content and the media, people's content and the media that they're reviewing within their content.
Yeah, I'd say there is a misquote that I keep hearing because I listen to like a talk radio show, and it's like, what is the point of having a mind if you're unwilling at any point to change it? It's been misquoted somewhat. It's someone's quote somewhere, but it does stick in my
There's
head, and
another
that it's like,
there's one very similar to that by a CPG Gray who he said something about like it's like opinions are not who you are. They're a thing that you keep like in a basket with you.
mm-hmm,
You carry it along with you. It is separate from you, and opinions are if you want to be right all the time, you have to be willing to change your opinions frequently and often
yeah, yeah,
because otherwise you're just going to get caught out
mm-hmm.
you're going to get caught with your pants down a lot more often than you'd like.
Yeah, so it's like I mean, this whole sort of idea of wanting to stubbornly stay with something in regards to anything else, regardless of whether something comes up. It's one thing. I mean, now don't be a don't be a flip flopper and just try and please the closest crowd that you can get to.
Yeah, no,
But
that's not what that means either. But yeah,
yeah,
it's just trying to get that out there.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so
So we're 15 minutes in. We haven't even
well,
started.
we're
Really,
yeah,
that was all
8 minutes.
preamble.
Yeah, that's the
All right,
preamble.
right.
That's the general.
I guess the stream is 15 minutes. We had the intro, but yeah.
Yeah. So Duncan, you had your list of sort of things that you were to do. I would like to bring the list up on my screen, but I know that the camera would disappear if I did it. So, because you just sort of said we wanted to sort of just like flip through what was good,
Well, I
what was
just
bad
figure
about sort of various bits.
I just feel like in order to stop us from just sort of like randomly just dropping in and out
Yeah.
at various points in the show, we should like organize our thoughts into
Mm.
like, either like one general overall blurb about the show, either before, at the beginning, or after,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can like break it down by like character, world building, uh,
Lot.
art direction,
Like, see,
plots, things like that.
yeah. See, I like that idea, and then I guess two of these can be very easily discussed and agreeable sort of immediately. And I guess we could just get those ones out of the way, considering that's the thing. And this is sort of whole idea of you don't like anything in the show, blah blah blah. No, straight off art, animation, soundtrack.
All good, all
Yeah,
good. You know what?
absolutely.
I think that you know what? My issues with this show have always been pretty much exclusively with story and character. I
Hmm.
really like, I think it's a very good looking show.
Yep.
They've done some pretty cool animation sequences.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that this show is not just like, this wasn't just some fucking thing that Ryan just slapped together
Hmm.
with some spare animation time to rake in a few views and a few subscriptions. It was clear that a lot of resources got dumped into this,
Oh,
which
absolutely. I mean, there's stuff that is in here that any animation with anything close to a budget would have to cut or not be able to do that. I mean, I guess this could
this
be the problem with having all those 10-cent dollar bills, is
this is
when money is no object, this is what, animation wise, this is what the result is.
this shit ain't no Ruby. All right, this is they came out swinging. I'll grant them that.
Yeah, so let's just get it out of the way.
It's
Animation
it's
is
not so
fucking gorgeous.
Yeah, it's not just
Like,
some dude in working out of a spare bedroom for 12 hours a day by
yeah,
himself.
it's not Japanese
As best he
manga,
can.
like, animation room, where the decisions on whether to like convert manga into an anime is done on the whims of the creator and whether they want to take a 6-week break off or not, or just want to work everyone ragged for 2 months. It probably happened. But that comes into it, and that's fine. And the soundtrack, generally, there's a couple of pieces that I'm not. I mean, it's like there was the soundtrack at the end of episode 2. There was this sort of like jazz, soul, R&B song at the end when Vi decides to, turn herself in. It didn't get me. It was still nice. It just wasn't my sort of music. There was some other. I don't know
I would
actually. I mean, I didn't feel the intro to this final until she starts having fights in season 2. Savika Vi fight. I mean, I guess it was supposed to be like a saloon showdown. It just didn't feel like that to me initially, and then it sort of picked up for the actual fight. But that's sort of where I was in terms of the music. And generally it was very good. And the original music, the sort of the score,
Yeah, I would say
pretty
that
much
my
fit where it was.
my liking is definitely more heavily on the score. Now that I think about it, like I was willing to just sort of like go like, oh yeah, music, great. It's just like,
Mm,
I mean, I'm not all that much of a hip hop pop kind of guy, so like,
yeah.
sometimes I was just kind of like taken out and be like, oh, this kind of sounds more like something I'd listen to on the radio than something that would be like part of like a TV show.
Mm.
It felt like sometimes I felt the music felt a little like, I don't know, CW-ish, where it's just kind of
See,
like,
this is yeah. You see, this is a fun thing. Yeah,
sort
sort
of
of
Batwoman type soundtrack almost.
yeah, Vampire Diaries sort of stuff, where there's always like a song that's just been tailor chosen by the line producer or whatever to just go, yes, this is the song that explains Vampire's heartache over not being able to turn his not girlfriend. That sort of idea. I mean, it sort of fits into this sort of young adult show that sort of Arcane
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Uh,
I just like, yeah. I mean, they're definitely on point there. I mean, the
mhm.
one thing, I mean, I fucking
um,
love probably this my second or first favorite. It's either one or two. My
mm,
probably my first or second favorite seed is probably the very first seed in the show.
yeah,
Uh, in very episode 1 where we get the flashback of the first attempt at the
the
nation of Zon,
rebellion. Yeah.
the rebellion,
Um,
and seed is good overall, and I really like the 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 track that plays, not the person over the river,
mhm.
which is fine. I just like that with the what is that, like a cello or something? It's one
Yeah.
of the lower string instruments, I think. I
Mhm.
don't think that's a violin, but it's just like
Just
it's a
the
really
score that
nice.
plays during that bit is
Oh,
just like, yeah, and that's the thing. It's sort of Riot.
which I guess
It's always
I guess it
the
is just an orchestral version of like
yeah, it's an
Grand Over the
orchestral
River or
person
whatever.
over the river. Yeah. Um, which would considering you hear that thing about 3 times, Jinx humming it at one point as well as singing it, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so in terms of animation, music can't be faulted.
Can occasionally be
Nine,
faulted, but
can
for the most
occasionally,
part,
but
pretty good.
yeah, it's absolutely fine
Any
on there.
visually wise, any s- scene or sequence you want to just point to, just for the sake of having, rather than just being like it was good, moving on, like just
Yeah. Oh
you can
god,
move
there's a
on.
couple of good scenes. I'm just sort of trying to think. If there's anything, very very small bit of character animation, sort of liking, when Jace and Victor start trying to test the hex tech stuff in Heimerdinger's office, and when Jace asks Victor, "Will this blow up?" and there's just this. Victor doesn't say anything, but you just see this awkward shrug and, eh? Like, like I don't know. This could literally blow up in our face, but progress, right? Those sort of things. But for me, sort of the bits that sort of broke, I guess, on this. This comes up in various scenes, but sort of inner monologues of Jinx and Echo, and the bridge fight scene. Even though the bits before it and after it we've discussed and sort of have issues, the
Yeah,
stylizing of the way
this
that sort of Echo looks at all this stuff, gritty, sort of like hand drawn, almost like crayon style art, which
yeah,
is
and you know what?
completely off from the rest of the watercolor
I'll give
animation.
that scene its due. Like it's like I said, there's some logistical problems with immediately before that scene. There's
Hmm.
some serious fucking problems with immediately after that scene.
Yeah.
But the scene itself is solid. Not even just animation wise, just like just visual storytelling wise. Like you get
Hmm.
that, you get that sort of idea of like, yeah, they used to do this kind of thing when they were kids, and back then it was just innocent and play fun, and now they're gonna take that what they know about each other, their history, and they're gonna try and apply it to their
Mm.
much more serious, kill or be killed type of present day
Sort
moment.
of, yeah, sort of
And
situation that has there, and the
plus even
literal rewind at that point
and
prior
even just
to
like
to Echo
yeah,
even having the Z drive or the Z drive.
yeah, it's just like and just have that contrast of like that really highly stylized flashback animations
Mm.
sequence. Contrast that against just the gritty, just immediately pins her to the ground and starts punching her in the face.
Yeah.
It's just like that hard cut of like, oh yep, no, we're fighting now. And
Hmm.
then weird things happen. But like I said, we're just here to talk about that particular sequence. And it
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah. And so, did you have a particular scene that you sort of felt that all just popped off for you?
Um okay, so I don't particularly like the way Mel and Jace's relationship sort of came out of nowhere and was
Hmm.
not remotely substantiated whatsoever. Uh, and I said it at the time in our Act 2 review
Yeah.
that if that one sequence where it's sort of like a very like sort of trippy visual of the Victor's blood getting mixed with the Hex Tech core, and it's sort of like there's a lot of sort of interspliced with their sex scene.
Hmm.
You get a little bit of a a little bit of a visual metaphor going on there of the sex.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it's a cool scene. I like it a lot. I think it's a
Hmm.
visually striking scene. I just wish that like the story around it made a little bit more sense. If that was like a if that was a well constructed storyline, that scene would have been like a real hell of a capper,
I mean,
capper,
that's just
topper, whatever.
Topper. Yeah, Kappa, Topper. It's the same sort of thing. And I mean, yeah,
Kappa?
yeah. Jason Mel, naught to hex sex, is is quite there. But I guess, like I say, this is where we always talked about the sort of the pacing issue. Which I'm sorry, even if you're really really enjoying this and you're part of the sort of close to perfection crowd, pacing. Right, the show, and I think we discussed this at this point. The show could have really done with either extending its episode run or changing the act structure into sort of providing and fleshing out a bit more of the stuff, especially with the time skips.
This I've said it before. These acts should have been a season each, and I
Mm,
know that that's a pain in the ass. I know that this a show that's sort of like the downside of having a show that's like this high production
hmm.
value. in that it's like, unless you are Disney and you just have literally billions of dollars that you can spend every single year on just thousands and thousands of animators working around the clock,
Mm-hmm.
when you make a show that's of this sort of premium quality, you can't just make, you know, a season year after year after year. And
Mm.
I understand to a degree the production logistical problems with trying to convert this into 3 stars. I understand the desire to try and compress this into as little as possible, but
Mm.
eventually you have to ask yourself, it's just like, is it worth it for me to tell a worse story if it means it gets out faster? Like, is
Mm.
it, at the end of the day, either, you know, it's like, I just feel like the finances are what really got in the way, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, is they didn't make this into 3 seasons, even though they probably could have,
Mm-hmm.
because A, they didn't want their viewer base to disappear on them out of impatience, and and B, they didn't want to have to put in the extra money to, you know, double, triple the length of the show.
Mm. Which
And
we've sort of explained in regards to this, is of the of having, sure, Tens and Riot have got all the monies, but you still want to make it you still want to make a decent return on investment. Which in this case would be getting a lot of subscribers to want to watch, a lot more stuff, and then to keep it going. This still fulfills Riot's
yeah,
sort
well,
of
that's the
key
thing, is
idea
like
with modes of engagement.
they're
If
also
people,
not putting all of their money into this show. Like,
uh-huh,
at the end of the day, the majority of Riot's, finances are going into their other projects, mainly
yeah,
League of Legends and the other 500 things that they've made in the last 2 years.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Like,
they can't.
they were good for a solid decade, one project, and this is like
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
Memed on for 10 years for being. How can you keep calling yourself Riot Games? You're Riot Game, right? And then
Riot Game, yeah.
10 years later, on their anniversary, they go, bitch, please, and splurge everything. Teamfight Tactics, Wild Rift, Legends of Runeterra, Valorant, the upcoming Project L, the which is the fighting game, Project. No, Project A was Valorant, but there's like another one. There's a project there's basically going to be an MMO or sort of at the very minimum Diablo style experience set in Runeterra. They've got all that. Then the music scene, which they're now not just doing just working with artists for music for worlds and the sort of tie-ins and trailers and stuff like that. They've actually got a music department that makes sort of little bits of score that's League of Legends themed for streamers. They have like a collection of stream friendly music that you can use on your stuff, and so music's an important part of it. Riot is basically just dipping their hands into absolutely every jar. Now, what comes with that is that they need to make sure that they're not that they're not overreaching and sort of sacrificing one bit for all the others, and that's sort of where the sort of problems come along, especially with Arcane, where we're now sort of probably going to get into sort of the written portions of it, and how, due to how, I mean, this is probably the thing, and how, as nice as Arcane looks, that makes the flaws and the issues that we've had in regards to storytelling and plot and theming and pacing in particular, for me, just show up a lot more prominently, because it's weird, it's a bad use of the uncanny valley sort of idea, for for CG, sort of the closer to looking realistic, the more off-putting it looks when there are issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same sort of thing in regards to Arcane and its sort of story beats. And this is sort of an issue that just keeps racking in my head in regards to sort of the Hollywood scene. It's like how stuff can be really big box office favorites, and I don't even mean the MCU. But let's take something that gets ridiculed a little bit more. The Fast and the Furious franchise, of
Okay.
of which story this is a true definition of what they call a popcorn flick. It's just a standard blockbuster. Does anyone really know about the story beats that happen in a Fast and Furious film, other than the memes of Dom talking about family and
Fam.
and all that stuff? No, people that go there and they watch it, and it's cars blowing up in increasingly more
Well,
ridiculous ways, and
Fast and Furious, it's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
oh, fuck off.
R.I.P. Carrie Fisher. But I feel like okay. Anyway, I feel like we're getting a little
Yeah,
off track.
but
Getting
yeah,
back
so
to
right.
Arcane here.
Hmm.
We're generally positive about the animation. I generally think it's a pretty good looking show.
Yeah,
It's
sound,
it's and I'm a fan of the score. I guess that's the distinction between soundtrack and score, right?
hmm
Because soundtrack is sort of all inclusive, and it includes sort of songs that are just I don't know what you would call it, like recorded, like
yeah,
things that are not like produced.
something that could just be just its own song as opposed to something that's here as part of the sort of thing. So it's just taken
Whereas
to. I mean, we
whereas
keep
yeah,
joking about it. The fact that they got motherfucking Sting to do a song, for Arcane, where Sting probably doesn't even know what a League of Legends is.
Imagine
Which actually,
Dragons.
I say that, but Riot seem to make a point of actually working with artists that do know, which now just leaves me to this weird nightmarish feeling of just watching Sting like inting top every every week on the Rift. He's
I
there
mean,
he's there using looks and just like what could have been, and just when he dies over and over. But yeah,
a 70-year-old man playing Twitch, Twitch
oh
streaming
well,
League of
there was a
Legends. Let's go.
Netflix advert that had Chrissy Costanza from Against the Current trying to teach a grandfather how to play League of Legends as part of a hype piece for
What?
Arcane.
What's the League of League of what now?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
it's like I can't even see the keys. Where's the Q?
Yeah, so some say he's lever busted about 5 times at this point as he's trying to write hello and just accidentally disconnects himself. Um, but yeah, so right, plot. We'll go with that.
Sure, we can talk about some plot, and we have I have opinions about
Well,
plot.
yeah, that's us.
So I don't know. I feel like we're interrupting each other. I don't know
No,
who's
no,
leading.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Be my guest.
Uh Plot, man. So I mean, as far as like the major writing elements go, between plot and character, I definitely have worse things to say about character than plot. I think
Hmm.
character was probably the biggest weakness of this show. But plot is kind of weird too, cause at first things are going okay.
Hmm.
Like at first we've got two totally separate yet intertwined stories about Jason the Hextech project, plus the Jinx powder in the underground
Hmm.
plot. And I have issues with the Hextech story at first, just based on the whole like I just don't like that how Victor and Jace essentially are rewarded for doing things that are extremely dangerous, being very reckless, putting a lot of people and property in danger. That leads into character a lot.
Mm.
They're going to be kind of hard to separate. I'm going to do my best to separate character from plot here.
Yeah.
But essentially, they get to become rich, famous, successful Hextech people because they broke the rules, and
Mm.
it's and there's some problems with that. I really think that there should have been more resistance to Hextech. I think maybe that maybe we could have had a little bit more. This is something I could have done in the expanded intervening time between hypothetical season 1 and 2, where
Hmm.
They they could have been like, well, the hex tech, it's pretty great. It'll change your lives. It's like, but will it change it for the better? We don't know. Could be exploited. Blah blah blah. Like, let's just have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
Like this is a big deal. This is a revolutionary change for a 200-year-old city.
Hmm.
And then the plot in the underground, I think, is actually mostly good
Mm.
for Act 1 for the most part. I have issues with how it ended, but I think there's I like that there's sort of like uh there's a through line. Like
Mm.
it's Vi does a thing. She makes a mistake, and that results in consequences, which results in characters, you know, taking more actions, which results in
Yeah.
more consequences.
Yeah. It's like this
This is
snowballing
start.
effect that sort of happens.
It brings the enforcers into the underground, which forces them to go into hiding, and eventually, Vi realizes that the only way she's gonna get this to make this go away is to turn herself in, and I think
Mm.
that would have been an interesting direction to take. But then other things happen. The thing that confuses me the most about the Undercity plot is Silco himself.
Mm.
I'm kind of baffled by Silco as a character and as a plot device.
He's
Um,
he's he's
what are your feelings on Silco? I feel like I really need. I don't feel like I have your your feedback.
Silco is an enigma.
I
Is
agree.
an enigma sort of full of sort of contradictory characterizations of him. There's trying to think of the words of this. Sort of his absolute blindness in regards to, let's say, the actions of Jinx, where people, his own henchmen, have done less and get at the least chewed out for it, and
Mm-hmm.
at the worst threatened with death. I mean, and I guess that's supposed to be sort of this characterization of Silco of being this very flawed father figure, because he's meant to be a father figure to Jinx, and that's the sort of thing. He's not a good father. Let's just get that clear. But he's a he's
No.
he is trying to be a father figure just to keep Jinx on side, but is having to put a bit more effort into it rather than sort of Vanda's just ability of dealing with this. And Vanda does treat Powder like a daughter. Thank you. Uh, just to sort
But
of throw that in there, he treats all his children like his
like
children, and that's the sort of thing that I've got there.
and that and we can get more into that when we get to the character. But like
Hmm.
I'm just talking
But sort
specifically
of in
about
in
like
sort of in
his
what is sort of
his
like his
plot,
yeah
his
his
storyline.
yeah
Like
which
so, like here,
which is also confusing because in regards to his plot and sort of the motivations on there was to make Zorn independent from Piltover. But
yes, and
how he decides he wants that to happen
so his
changes
first
all
plan.
over 3 acts.
Well, his first plan, which I don't know if it was a more of a Vander thing or more of a him thing or sort of half and half, but his first plan is apparently to try and just bum rush Piltover
Yeah,
and
just
just whatever,
invade Piltover. It's just like
just claim independence. Did I don't know. Does he not
mm,
know that Piltover has guns? Is that not information that he's savvy to? Because when you are a nation that doesn't have guns and you try to attack a nation that has guns, that will never work. It will
mhm,
literally never work. Has anyone ever seen the movie Zulu? Anyone at all? Have we seen this? The guns present a tremendous strategic advantage
mhm,
over non-gun wielding armies.
yeah,
The only usually it's like through overwhelming numbers is when gun wielding forces defeat uh gun enemies, a la the Flood and the Zerg from
mm,
Halo and StarCraft respectively.
yeah.
you know it's just like 1,000 to 1 odds, then yeah, okay, maybe you can overwhelm them.
Yeah, because
But
that's I guess
you're
that's the other thing. There's a lot more people in Piltover than there is in Zorn, so you're already out. You are outmanned and outgunned.
Yeah, and it's like there is some context for like Savika at some point episode 2, I think it was, says like, "Ah, we got the numbers, we can take them." It's like, I mean, what I mean when you say numbers, are you talking like 25% more, 50%, double their population? Like I don't know, you know, like you got sticks and knives. You don't even have like good armor. Like you're not gonna make it,
Mm,
you
yeah.
know.
So
So
yes,
anyway,
so
that was his first plan. That was a
yeah.
terrible plan
Then his second plan is to intimidate Piltover with
via
Shimmer,
Shimmer,
which
and but he
kind
even's
of
like
works, I
specific.
guess. But then,
It's like he even specifically says like, I don't want to destroy them. I don't want to kill them all. I just want to scare them. It's just
yeah,
like, and you're willing to risk everything for that?
yeah.
I guess.
Then the X-year time skip happens, and he does nothing. He's doing
He
some
really
smuggling
doesn't.
routes everywhere, and it's only due to Jinx's actions that he steps up, sort of trying to, I guess at that point, just reinforce Zorn. It's Jinx that wants to, show the Pilties a lesson.
I would have actually really liked to see a lot more, because they show that scene of like Act 2
Mm,
where they got like barrels of shimmer being shipped up to the Piltover.
mm,
And I just think there would be a more interesting scene if if they showed more of the the Undercity influence, like corrupting Piltover and causing more harm on the surface.
mm.
Because as far as we're concerned, it's like we're told that there's shimmer afoot within Piltover thanks to Silco's smuggling rings, but we only ever see people like using it in the Undercity.
Yeah.
Like if we
See,
could see Piltover getting kind of like crapped on,
mm,
it, it would give us more motivation of like, yeah, we need to fix this because it's ruining our shit now.
mm. Now, the other thing to go on this, and there's an inference, and it's dangerous. Inference is dangerous. We just put that in there. If I had the ability to just do big flashing lights now, I would do that. But the other thing to sort of go on is it wasn't necessarily also going towards Piltover. It was on an airship, and there
Hmm.
was a chance that it was going to be going through a hex gate. So there's the
True,
opportunity
it
that it
could
could
be
be
going.
spreading to other regions of Valoran from there.
Wonder if Noxus has getting any shimmer stuff. That would be interesting to know that the
Mm.
warmongering nation of Noxus would be getting involved in some chemical
Being like
warfare.
Riot and just dipping their militaristic hands in all the pies.
There you
So,
go.
so we're looking to
Or yeah,
upgrade.
you could even be like, oh my god, I just figured it out. I just solved the puzzle
Oh,
of
fantasy booking. Here we go.
uh what if the reason why Mel's family is getting their asses kicked is because the enemy nation has been Silco's buyer of shimmer and they're using that to crush them, and then that is like a whole thing
And
where
that's
they have
and
to
that's
like and that's Mel's motivation to influence Jace
mm,
to get them to use Hextech to stop the production of shimmer, so that they can get back on track on their war and
mm,
cut off their supply.
to
Boom!
at least to at least stall until Hextech was fully ready for weaponry, and then
Yeah, and it's
Mel's
like they
mother
don't
could just come in
necessarily
and
have.
just go, right now we got the upper hand.
Yeah, and it's like they don't even necessarily need to go as far as like to make the weaponry. I think that they could open
Mm,
up that possibility. Um, that could be a fun scene where what's her face, Mel's mom, Ambessa, is like trying to negotiate some kind of like arms deal,
mm-hmm.
either during or after the crackdown on Silco, as sort of a way of like reclaiming their lost land or whatever, or gaining vengeance on their enemy. And she could start off and be like, "Hey, we're gonna give you all of the money," and they're gonna be like, and the council be like, "Ugh, we sure do like all the money, but it's still kind of
Which
sketchy."
which they've proven they do, because that's the whole reason why they've been able to why Jace was able to exploit corruption
That's the whole
in
reason
the
why he
Piltover
didn't
Council.
immediately get thrown in jail for doing magic
Mm,
in the middle of their council room.
yeah.
Um,
So do you reckon there
but,
was
but
a
but yeah, and then they could that could be a whole thing. That could
yeah?
have been such a fun little plot thread, and it would and it's one of those things where like it ties all of the story elements together in a continuous loop. Like instead of just having like random things happening that occasionally interact with each other,
Mm,
you've got the full loop of like Noxon War as a result of Silco, which then leads to Piltover taking action against Silco, which leads to more things happening in
mm,
Noxus. It would really tie the world together a little bit.
yeah. One question that comes up in my head on this, because you got the Jinx and Vi thing is the clear A plot. I mean, that's what it's all come down to. That's what the whole bloody thing was supposed to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And so the J story was the B plot. Now,
Mm-hmm.
do you think the show could have benefited by crossing over the plots a bit quicker than effectively the final act? Because I know there's
I would
the
definitely.
first little bit of crossover would be Jinx blowing up a building in Piltover in front of Caitlyn, but that was sort of I don't want to say it was sort of like coincidental or stuff like that. It was
They did
sort of a
feel
small
oddly
thing.
disconnected for a really long time.
Hmm.
Like they occasionally had, like obviously the whole catalyst for the AB split in the first place was Vi and the gang robbing Jace's house. So like,
Yeah.
they had that initial connection,
Oh, yeah, I didn't even know.
and
I
that's sort
completely
of
forgot
what,
about that. Yeah.
and that's sort of it's the whole catalyst. That's the whole inciting incident.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's where the story eventually essentially splits. But like, I'm just surprised they don't actually like follow up more on that. At like more persistently. The most of the interactions between Piltover and Zon are very indirect.
Yeah.
They're sort of shots across the bow, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Yes.
I would totally be on board for more interaction. A
Hmm.
thing happens in Zon that affects Piltover, therefore Piltover immediately responds, doing something that affects
Yeah.
Zon,
And I mean,
and
let's be fair with the cliffhanger as it is. If they try and do an A plot and B plot there involving that, it probably doesn't work at this point because about a, a super mega
I'd
death rocket
I'd
on the
say
council building is about as direct an action
bye
as you
bye.
could make. Yeah.
I would say that those plots are pretty well intertwined at this point.
Hmm.
There's not really much separation going on in there anymore. Which again, that also just kind of I feel like the problem with that decision is it really limits the kinds of stories that can now be told from that
Mm,
area.
yeah.
I feel like the council as a whole was kind of like a waste of time, a waste of potential. Like there were really only 3 characters on that whole council. At the end of the day, it was really just Mel, Jace, and Heimerdinger. It's like
Hmm.
we got kind of something, sort of a little bit from Caitlyn's mom, but not
Yeah. There's
really.
Cassandra
And the other
Kieran.
characters were just, and the other characters were just, they were just cardboard cutouts. They had
Yeah.
nothing going on.
Set dressing. That's.
They were, they were just asses in chairs there to make it look like the council was bigger and more important than it actually was.
Mm,
Plot wise, you could have had, you know, half as many characters in that council, and it would have been effectively the same thing.
yeah. And still would have been as effective or ineffective as everything would have been in regards to that. Um, right. I know that so we do want to have a talk about characters and stuff, but considering that that's probably going to be the biggest thing of our lot,
I
and
want
probably
to leave
something
characters
to
to the
finish off.
last
Yeah,
because I have the most problems with characters. I have the most things to say about character.
yeah. So let's go for world building then, as
So world building,
sort of as the idea of yeah the world that we're introduced to and how people who wouldn't have even watched League of Legends would have been or played League of Legends would be introduced to. So this is their first view of
yeah.
Runeterra, Valorant,
Essentially,
and two
when
cities.
I sorry, when I talk about world building, what I'm talking about very simply is
Mhm.
just the general setting and mechanics of the world in which the story is set.
Mhm.
Do they, you know, do we know enough about them that we can reasonably understand how? My dog is
The dog's wanting
howling
to
in his
understand
sleep.
world building.
Is yawning. I think that was supposed to be a yawn.
Always a
Um.
critic.
Uh. Yeah, I know. I know our reviews are long and boring. I'm sorry. We don't have an editor. Taking all bets. Uh. But essentially, it's just like, do we know enough about it that we can reasonably predict and understand how things work and how things interact?
Hmm.
Does do the do any fantastical elements presented in the show like outright contradict themselves? Is consistency a thing? And I would have to say, next to the overall like art direction, I would say world building is probably the second strongest element. As much
Yeah,
as I have problems with the things in the story and in the world, uh,
the
I
worlds
think that
themselves are absolutely fine.
the world is fine. Like I think, and I said this. I don't remember which review it was. I remember saying this, that it's like the smartest decision that they could possibly have made when they came up with the idea for making a TV show about League of Legends
Hmm.
is to have it set in the part of the world that is like the least to do with magic,
Yeah.
because that really gave them the opportunity to tell a story that was a lot more grounded and less fantastical and outlandish compared
Mm.
to our real world. Like, you know, we because when you get into magic, it's really hard to like do magic right in a way that's like consistent and understandable.
Hmm.
And low fantasy settings tend to be a lot easier to like build mechanically. Like
Yeah.
Game of Thrones is a world that's very low, like magic. Very, there's not people aren't like shooting fireballs at each other and teleporting across the world. And
I feel like
Game
the
of Thrones,
biggest
it's
bits of
very
magic in that is like far seeing and stuff like that. Really, isn't it? It's sort of
yeah.
like
It's like and usually when magic does happen, like powerful magic, it's a great cost of like very particular rituals. There's blood sacrifices, and a lot
commands
of
of
times
dragons.
there are dragons, sure.
That's
And
about as
it's
big fantasy as it gets, really, isn't it? Just giant
yeah, but it's
dragons.
also like, but even the dragons themselves are like they're not particularly like mythical. Like they're presented very as much as if they are like animals, as
Yeah.
dragons can be treated. You know, like they're not ageless necessarily. They don't speak. They don't they don't really have like very magical properties. They're just
Hmm.
kind of fantastical animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, this was just sort of my example of like it was a really smart idea to minimize the emphasis on magic and introduce it in a very slow and controlled way. Of like, this is what we can do with magic now. Now we're going to expand it a little bit. This is what we can do with magic now. We'll go a
Hmm.
little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. But most of it is still going to be, sort of like I don't even know what to call it, sci-fi, or it's like it's
Well,
really more like steampunkish,
yeah. I mean, sort of, yeah. So it's probably it's labeled on a lot of the places as science fiction fantasy.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
like science fantasy kind of deal.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, you sort of right, especially in sort of the disparity between Piltover and Zorn, you can sort of definitely tell that steampunk is well, there's elements of steampunk between both cities. In sort of, and it's just sort of what changes is the materials that they're using to get by to still have that aesthetics. So sort of steampunk is probably a lot more in the sort of clothing department in Zorn as it would be to the technological or sort of the not the structures that you would find in Piltover. I mean, there's clear starts of sort of like shantytown aesthetics in Zorn as well, but yeah,
Like
it's
everything,
definitely
yeah,
has that sort of
everything
thing.
seems sort of almost like 18th century with like, but like still like, but there's like there is electricity, like electricity is a thing, sort of.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a little bit. It's a little bit weird, a little bit flippy, like when they do the whole arcade machine thing and
Hmm.
on. It's just like it's like, there's power. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but I don't need to know how it works. It's fine. It's
Yeah,
just
just
it, it
the fact
just
that it
works.
works is a lot of the time good enough. I mean, Time Skip Zone, where they embrace the neon, that's
Very neon.
sort of like heading towards
Um,
cyberpunk, just
yeah,
still
order.
being in a steampunk timepiece.
All
So
right. I haven't been keeping up with the times. Are we allowed to like cyberpunk, or is that still bad? I
cyberpunk
don't
is
I
now
don't know.
considered is now started. Cyberpunk, it got its shit. People are now starting to say it's getting fixed, so it's what it should have been a year ago. So people are starting to like it. What people aren't liking is the fact that it's being considered a out and out RPG as opposed to a stealth based shooter with RPG elements.
Hmm.
That sort of idea is really close to action adventure. So it's weird coincidental appearance in the Game Awards as an RPG is probably what people are a little bit off about, especially compared to the traditional RPGs that it's up against. But yeah, people are starting to like Cyberpunk now.
All right.
It's coming back in.
Good for them.
So
So what does that
shall
leave
we?
us? Yeah, no, world building is totally fine. I'm totally chill with world building, and I think that as long as they continue to minimize magic, uh, I think if they decide to start bringing in like Demacia and shit, like they're gonna start having some problems.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
I was about to say my little piece on the world building in regards to this. There was a lot of like fan based reaction or fantasy bookings for Arcane season 2 that says bring Demacia and bring Mount Targon, and all I'm saying is don't stick the course. When they initially announced this, they said that Arcane was always going to be about the story of Piltover and Zorn, and as far as I'm concerned, yeah, bring in some guest characters bring in some guest things as long as it makes sense for the plot. The Noxian plot is there for a reason. That's what it's for. Finding out that that Mel is not just a Piltovan like lady, but she's actually an exiled member of a Noxian house. It's sort of sort of a bit more interesting than that. But you don't need to start. You don't need to. You mentioned Ruby earlier on. You don't need to sort of pull a Ruby and just decide, right, we need to expand this world so fast and have so many plots happening in the entire world of Valorant all at the same time in this season. Don't do that.
I feel like the worst thing that they could do would be to go full World of Warcraft
Mm,
and just be like, we're gonna introduce every single possible thing that existed in this period of the world, in this period of the story,
hmm
and we're not gonna balance this shit at all. It's just we're just gonna throw it at the wall and see what happens.
Yeah.
You
As far
know,
as I'm concerned.
the World of Warcraft movie is like that could have been a whole lot better. They just the problem was lack of focus. Like they really
Mm,
needed to. It would have been a lot stronger if they had played it kind of the way that the story is presented in the Warcraft games. It's like, let's focus on the humans. Let's tell their story first.
hmm
And then we can introduce an element of depth by talking about what the orc perspective was during that story in the next movie. Just a little small story.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where you start, and then you go a little bit bigger, and then a little
hmm
bit more, a little bit more. You kind of sort of radiate outward in a spiral when you tell these stories.
Yeah.
You know,
So start
one
small,
thing that
work slowly outwards.
exactly.
And that's sort of my thing on this. If you want, to be honest, as a fan, if you want a Demacian based high fantasy thing, and I can't actually just picture Demacia being told of a story of anything other than Game of Thrones, but with the forbidden magic. To be fair, but if I think where Riot's aim is, and probably what fans should just be aware of on this, is that it's probably nice to tell stuff in League of Legends separate from each other. You don't need to make a massive sort of thing, and I guess that's where I like the Riot Forge games, the League of Legends stories. You want a story about like Piltover and pirate functions and stuff? Go play Ruined King. You want a nice little charming adventure about a boy and his Yeti traveling through the Freljord? Song of Nunu got you covered. Stuff like
Yeah,
that. You don't need
yeah.
to sort of just bring everyone in for
It
all
really
the
needs
reasons.
the last thing they want to do is to MCU it, because the MCU was really strong at first when it was about half a dozen dudes who barely knew each other that eventually came together to work
Hmm.
as a group. And it worked fine at first because it was a small group. We knew what their powers were, we knew their backgrounds, we knew where they came from and what like influence they have on the world.
Yeah.
But the more things they introduced in the MCU, the more things started to start to get a little bit bloated and start to sort of fall apart because it's like
Whoops.
every new MCU property now has to take the time. They either have to take the time to explain why every single other character in the MCU either doesn't have anything to do with this story, or doesn't know about you, or hasn't interacted with you at all up until this point. Uh, or they can just not do that and then leave everybody confused as to why all those questions are not answered.
Yeah.
It's like, how can the Eternals exist? How can this thing exist that there are thousands and thousands of years old? They've apparently had influence on humankind forever, and they never interacted with anything until now. It's like bullshit. Like, it's bullshit. We know that's bullshit. Doctor Strange is like, it's like we. It's like, how come you never do anything with the Avengers? Sorcerer Supreme is like, we only protect the world from mystical threats. It's like, okay, so like, if the whole
Mm.
world got taken over by aliens, you would just be chill with that because they're not magic. It's like, yes. It's like, it's like when you keep doing things like that over and over and over again in this shared universe, you're eventually gonna fuck things up beyond
It's
repair.
yeah, it's going to fall apart at some point, and is the House of Cards. And I'll just say it now, Eternals. I kind of forgot half the stuff that happened in it. To be fair, maybe it's a shame because
I saved myself the money. I didn't bloody watch it. It's just like MCU's fourth wave is a waste of everyone's time. I'm not interested in giving them any more money, honestly.
well, I'm going to be a fool and keep going, only due to the fact that I'm going to be doing a movie a week challenge
Oh boy.
next year. So I just
Good luck, I
trying
guess.
to
They'll all be Marvel. They'll all be owned by Disney. Movie a week? No problem.
Disney. I for one welcome our corporate overlords. Right,
Um,
okay. I think we we
but yeah,
we're trying
yeah.
to.
So all good on world building front.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's just get into there. Let's just say we're running up to an hour on the stream now, but let's say we've got 20 minutes maybe. Let's just do it. Let's just go for it. Characters,
Okay,
go.
so character. Oh my god. So the only thing I actually wrote notes on were things about character, and I only got 3 of them,
Mm,
which I will talk about more than 3 characters. But it was just a thing where those things was like, I was spending so much time thinking about the things that I had problems with in the show that I was just kind of making myself depressed, so I just
mm.
kind of gave up.
I mean, where do you want to start this? Do you want to look at like maybe a comparison between sort of where you feel about the champions that were introduced or that were done in Arcane compared to the original characters?
Well, I mean, I don't really
In
have
regards
enough.
to that.
Well, no, I mean, I don't really have enough. First of all, I don't care how they compare to their original counterparts. This is adaptation
No,
argument.
no.
It's just
No,
like
no,
I
no,
don't.
no. What I mean is sort of the established champions. So
Yes,
Jace, Vi, and all that, and
yes.
the original characters, Silco, Mel.
Oh, right. Oh, my bad. I
Yeah.
don't.
So I didn't
I
want
thought
you
it was
I
like.
didn't want you going
I
down the
didn't.
rabbit hole and then.
I was like, oh my god, I have to compare them to the League of Legends characters. Let's fucking waste our time on this crap. Okay, yeah, the original characters created for Arcane versus uh
Established champions.
that was champions. It's really hard to say. I would, yeah, if I had to say it like very broadly, I
Mm,
would say that they're pretty close. Like, they like I think probably the best written character in the story is probably Vander. Still, he's his original character,
mm,
and he does have if you want to call it a problem, I don't really consider it to be a problem, but you could argue that it's a problem that like he doesn't really have like a character arc. He doesn't really have a character
mm,
journey. It's kind of his character arc is essentially built into him. Like he's essentially a finished product as far as like a character goes. So, like he doesn't really go anywhere. He just is an influence on the story.
Yeah. All the way through the
Um,
story, even though he's been dead for 2 acts. You know, there's a Silco
and
pour
I
one
have an
out for my boy Vander.
yeah, I was like, I have an argument against that though, where it's like you say that he's an influence throughout the show, but it's like I would argue that he's really not though, because the biggest problem with Vander, it's kind of like I have a comparison for this actually.
Okay.
So Qui-Gon Jinn from the Phantom Menace,
Yeah.
is an interesting character conceptually. I don't know if I can't say that he's a good character or a bad character. I haven't really done the math yet. But he's conceptually an interesting character because he is presented as a kind of Jedi that is more willing to sort of fudge the rules and be a little bit more independent and maverick and sort of ends justifies the means type of thing.
Yeah.
You see him, he's manipulating people to get up what he wants. He's fixing legitimate gambles in his favor. He disregards the council's orders on a frequent basis.
Oh yeah, he does.
But he's still a good person. Like ultimately, he doesn't do he would never do these things in the service of harming things or benefiting himself. Like he is ultimately a good and altruistic person. He just has a different view on morality.
Yeah.
And you would and it's kind of a cool character, but then he dies at the end of the movie. And you think, well, okay, this character is established to be a little bit of a maverick, a little bit of a rogue Jedi in a sense. Uh, and you think, well, that's a perfect catalyst for setting up a character to study under them and inherit those traits and sort of become the new Qui-Gon, so that his legacy is carried throughout the story. So we have a character who's a little bit more independent, because if you had a character that was just the Jedi Council personified, they would be the most boring character ever. They're just such a static, bureaucratic, boring, like they have no personality, the whole council.
Mm.
Um so it's good that they have this character who's got a little bit more going on as like a starting point, as a mentor figure. But the problem is that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, I mean, Anakin to a smaller extent, but he's more of like emotional problems. Like Obi-Wan is his direct mentor. He's studied under Qui-Gon for years, and he doesn't seem to have imparted any of the traits that Qui-Gon has put on him at all. Like
Mm.
he is nothing like Qui-Gon whatsoever. He doesn't disobey the council. He follows them to the letter of the law. He is not interested in like, he's in the whole end justifies the means or tricking people. Like he's a very by the books kind of Jedi. He's very
Yeah.
stern, very strict, and it's just and you think maybe Anakin is a little bit more of a rebel, but that has more to do. It's implied that has more to do with the fact that he was trained too late, which is kind of a fucked up thing. I don't really want to get into that. But it's like it's sort of like, he's got a little bit too much learning, a little bit too much prior knowledge. He's a little bit too independent, like emotionally, and it's not really played as like that's Qui-Gon's influence. So you have this character who is deliberately contrasted against all of the other authority figures in the show. Like it makes a big point out of this person is different from the others, and that's interesting. But then as soon as he dies, his influence evaporates from the rest of the story forever, and he leaves no lasting impact on any of the characters or the world around him.
Mm.
And I have that same problem with Vander. He's a great character. He is wise, he's kind, he's paternal. He's got a very strong motive that he works towards throughout the show. He tries his best to impart these lessons on Vi and other characters.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as he dies, it's just like none of the characters that he was influential on seem to have like adopted any of his teachings whatsoever. And aside from occasional passing mentions, his influence has evaporated from the story completely.
I guess
And I think
there
that's
was
the
one
problem.
there was one influence. It took Vi 3 acts to finally listen to him, of not
Yeah, too
blocking
bad
with
he
her
was.
face.
Yeah, well, isn't that great? Yeah, not we're not
Here
gonna
we go. Just
instead of
a
instead of taking on any of the actually important lessons, like uh, be responsible. Don't fucking shit down your sister's throat.
don't
Take good care.
abandon her.
Take care of her. And it's just like, it's just like that was like literally the last thing he ever said to her was take care of your sister. It was the most important thing that she didn't do. You know, like none of the things that she didn't do throughout the whole show made more of an impact on the story than not doing that. And it was the last thing he told her to do. It's
Mm,
just like, frankly, it's disrespectful. It's frankly disrespectful that she had that attitude towards his lessons. And that kind of leads into my problems with Vi as a character,
yeah,
honestly.
go for it. But we'll skip past the part that yes, for the purposes of this review, we are considering Vanda an original character. I know one of the last shots shows that Vanda will not be an original character anymore, and he'll be a champion. But let's go with what we can confirm first. Thank you.
Right,
Right, Vi.
what the whole Warwick bullshit. I'm so many concerns about that. Um, but anyway, uh, Vi, I really hate Vi. Like, I don't dislike Vi. I don't have neutral feelings towards Vi. I have neutral feelings towards a lot of characters. I dislike quite a few characters. I actually hate Vi. And I hate Vi because she is just an incredibly unlikable protagonist. She is extremely entitled and self-righteous. She has no capacity for taking responsibility for herself or learning a lesson at all.
Mm,
It's like it's I it's like the only regret she has in life is it's like so her biggest regret in life is that she abandoned Jinx, which is a fair thing to have regrets about, I think.
yeah.
You could argue that maybe that shouldn't have been a problem in the first place. Like if she had just thought through the situation at all, maybe that wouldn't have happened in the first place. But she is upset about that, and that's fine. But what she's not upset about is something I've talked about before, where she is not even like cognizant of the fact that her trying to take things from other people just because they had more stuff than her
Mm,
is the reason why everything happened. Like she made a mistake, she did a bad thing, and that is what has caused all of the misery in her life.
mm,
All of it. Like not excluding just life misery of just being in a bad place. Like as far as like the specific problems that are happening in this story,
we're
all of that is
explicitly tied
caused.
to her doing that heist.
Right, and she is not even like cognizant of the fact that was a mistake, that was something that she did that was wrong, and that she shouldn't have done that.
Mm,
She has no regrets for that, and that's a problem to me because it means that she was only upset about what she did when it came back to directly hurt her. She doesn't actually learn a moral lesson about how to solve her own problems. Her
mm,
problem, the thing that her problem is tied directly to her own self-interest. If things had worked out between Jinx and Vi, I don't think that she would have ever second guessed herself in terms of yeah, stealing is fine as long as the people you're stealing from can afford to lose it. You
mm,
know, and I just think that makes her just a really unlikable person. She
mm,
she really thinks that she is in the right to do that, and we have no references within the story to contradict that assessment of her.
mm.
And if she was like another character, if she had some kind of completed arc where she finally got around to like learning that that's all bad and that she was wrong, then like okay, that's fine. That's like a story. Or if she was like a secondary character who had that flaw and she wasn't like the focus of the show, and we had protagonists whose job it was to try and like talk her out of that mindset, then that could be more interesting. But she is the protagonist. She is, alongside Jace, she is essentially the driving force of this show,
Yeah. So
especially in
yeah, Jinx
Act One
Jinx
and
to
Three.
sorry, Vi to the A plot is Jace to the B plot. They are the point of view character
Yeah,
that we're
yeah,
supposed to be looking
exactly.
at here in regards to this. The audience
And
surrogate, if you will.
the show frequently wants you to feel bad for her too. Like it's not like again, this is the problem where she is not forced to confront her personal flaws at any point in the show. She is essentially let off the hook for her failings, and and I don't sympathize with her. I don't think that she deserves the I don't think she deserves the sympathy that the editing suggests that you should give her.
Mm.
They have that scene with Caitlyn and Vi in her bed, and she's pouring her heart out to her about this whole thing. Um, and
See for me, that strengthens Caitlyn more than it did Vi,
yeah,
because Caitlyn had this arc. She was this
yeah, no,
enforcer who was just fulfilling everything that Piltover meant to her, until she realizes how shit the people that her enforcers are oppressing down below. Sort of how she realizes they're human too, and then sort of with this personal experience in terms of Vi, for all her character flaws, sort of open up with sort of Caitlyn sort of doing that. And that's not to say Caitlyn doesn't have her own problems. I mean, we still discussed that
and
whole bit about the why she was an enforcer. To which someone tried to give me some idea that the reason Caitlyn wanted to be an enforcer was because she wanted to expose the big conspiracy. Nope, that's a That's taking information and then trying to shoehorn it into bits in the past. Don't try that.
yeah, no, we don't. We need. Unfortunately, that whole her training is something that started years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't have information that originates from prior or during that time, then
Yeah,
it's
because
inadmissible.
here's the
Uh,
fallacy on that one. Because if Caitlyn knew about the big conspiracy, that meant she would have had to have learnt the big conspiracy off Grayson, and Grayson knew fuck all about the big conspiracy, probably until about a quarter of a second before she became a red smear on the pavement.
yeah.
So,
But essentially, the whole what I was trying to get at with the whole like bed scene
mm-hmm.
with Vi is that we're essentially, it's essentially framed that we're supposed to be sympathizing with Vi, like this is her sort of pouring her heart out over this big mistake that she made. But the way she phrases it really treats her very favorably, which I mean, I can understand why, a character would want to make themselves look good. But she's essentially
Would it be the
fudging the
idea that she?
numbers to make herself seem more vulnerable and sympathetic to
Yeah,
Caitlyn.
I was about to say this on this. Isn't she basically this still going with this idea of Vi not really taking responsibility for stuff, because she's deflected all her mistakes onto Silco.
Yeah, it's just like he was a monster and I ran away. And she's like, and Caitlyn's like, ooh, woo. If Caitlyn had been there, like if she could just be like, you know, like crow's eye, like just view this scene,
Mm.
like psychically through her brain and her memory. I don't think Caitlyn would like Vi very much at all. I think she would probably be like, "Wow, you're fucking horrible. I can't believe I like thought you were hot or whatever. Bye."
Cupcake.
It's like,
And I know that's
no,
Vi that calls Caitlyn
Caitlyn's
Cupcake,
cook.
but yeah,
Yes.
because she's
So yeah,
sweet like a cupcake.
so that's Vi.
Mm.
Vi sucks, and I don't like her.
Let's have a
And it's
look.
not because
Other major characters then. Jace.
Jace is always a good place to start because I think that Jace got off to a rough start. Like he basically had 2 episodes, right? Because he wasn't even in the first episode at all. He had 2 episodes in Act 1 to establish his character, and they were both awful for him. They were not favorable to him at all.
Fatalist Jace is probably a good sort of start. I mean, we've had the sort of the arrogance, sort of this ego that Jace has is hardwired into his sort of character, but the idea that he's supposed to be just, I don't know. I mean, the whole fatalism argument, this is the pacing problem that come up. This idea that in the space of like hours, Jace goes to, sure, I've just managed to clear myself of a crime, but I've been kicked out of the academy. But I'm stubborn. I'm going to work on this thing with absolutely anyone who'll listen. To, I've run out of ideas in the space of 2 scenes.
Yeah, and it's just like Jace wants me to think that he's like out of options, that he's like at the end of the rope, and I don't believe him. I do not believe that to be the truth. And
we'll go with the idea that not a lot of people agree with that either. It was the weakest part. Well, some I'd consider it part of the weakest part of Jace's character.
Yeah, and it's just like he just lacks so many endearing qualities in his Act 1 portrayal. Like he just has no like gumption. He's got no what was I feel like there was a word I wrote down. But it's just like he immediately gives out tenacity. Like he just lacks any tenacity whatsoever. Like you would think maybe he might start over, like try an alternative route, now that he can no longer do these things, now that he's got eyes on him watching him do this sort of experiment, maybe now he has to do things more secretively, maybe he's got to go outside of town to perform his experiments, maybe he's got to work a night shift job to pay for the crystals, like I just want to see a little bit more of Jace doing things that any reasonable person would do, in the name of a project that they really, really cared about. It's like, it's kind of embarrassing to think that, like, I I demonstrated a greater level of tenacity and stick-to-itiveness writing this review than he did for his life's work. Like, that's kind of embarrassing, like, from a writing standpoint.
Yeah. Like I say, I sort of agree with you on this. It's sort of for someone who was as stubborn and so. I'm trying to think of the word for someone who was so hell bent on wanting to make this hex tech work. The fact that he nearly threw it away hour 1 is sort of disconcerting for me. And I know that the end of it is to introduce sort of Victor to the scene, but still.
There's so many other ways you could do that too. Like, maybe like, because Victor is kind of interested in hex tech, because he thinks that there's some potential there, and he's just afraid of voicing his opinion because he just saw the whole scene unfold in the council and is aware that, that opinion is not particularly popular. So maybe Victor just kind of like keeps tabs on Jace and sort of, follows him around a little bit, maybe sees him wandering off out of town to go do suspicious stuff, and then he sort of happens upon Jace's lair. I almost call it an evil lair. It's
his evil lair. Yeah, he's just his man cave.
It's just like, and then he could drop his famous line of like, "Oh, am I interrupting something?" While there's like fucking hextech shit going around in the room. It's like, and that's great. She could be like, "Blah!"
A piece of glass just hits a wall or something. Just am I interrupting something? I mean, I was about to say his famous line of, "Oh, you sign every page of your notes." A little egotistical, I suppose.
Well, at that point, he doesn't necessarily need to have his book, but that's what I mean, right? Like, you could literally do the same story that you wrote, and you could do it better, and all you have to do is add, like, a couple extra scenes.
Hmm.
And it's and this is the problem. Like, they just need to get to that point in the story so that they can move on to the other thing that they already wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, story just sucks. And again, he has the same problem that Vi has essentially, where uh, he's essentially just not learning his lesson. Like he's not taking responsibility for himself at all in Act 1.
Mm.
And instead of realizing that, yeah, the thing I did was a really terrible idea, it was really dangerous and irresponsible of me to do that. And then starting over in a safer, more controlled format, he instead just goes balls to the walls and does the same experiment again with more people and more property at risk
Mm.
than ever before. But this time it's successful. Therefore, he gets all the bitches. I don't know.
He
I
gets the
guess.
Hollywood treatment. You know.
Yeah, and that just sucks. That just sets him up in such a bad way. I actually find it incredible, literally miraculous, that by the end of Act 2, I actually liked Jace, because I thought I was never going to be able to redeem him because of just how like poorly he was
Mm.
characterized
Well, he was,
in Act
to
1.
me, he was like, yeah, that was a problem. So it was a big surprise to me when he actually sort of grew on me a little bit more over the remaining acts. Now, not enough to call him my favorite character, but certainly better
No,
than the Act 1 process that he was in. And
I
yeah,
mean,
it
he's
shows.
definitely in the top 5, if not the top 3, by the end of it. Like, just in
Mm,
terms of like likability, you know.
yeah, the likability
Um,
scale, that's different to the lickability scale.
I don't know licking Jace, please. Uh,
One Mercury
leave,
hammer out of 10. Um,
leave it in your fan fictions.
yeah, yeah. Someone else
What
can
else was I
ship
going to
that.
say about?
Any sort of other characters that sort of
Well,
like stood out
just
for
want to
good
finish
or
up
ill?
on. I just wanted to finish up with Jace,
Mm,
just in the sense that it's like, while I do admit that I like him a lot more in Acts 2 and 3, my big problem with Jace is that, and you could say this about a few different characters, and I'm not going to repeat myself for every character this applies to, but it's probably most prominent for Jace in the sense that while he is a lot more likable, his big problem is that he doesn't really seem to have like a through line. Like, he doesn't really have like a very clear arc in terms of like, he starts here, he learns these lessons, and now has become this person.
mm,
He's not very principled, is what it comes down to. Like, there isn't like a particularly strong thing that he feels a really particular way about, that at all costs he feels he must defend that position, or else come into major conflict with people that he's tucking in. Like how do I exemplify this? Like, Tony Stark for an Iron
mm,
Man feels like he has to be the one to fix all the problems in the
yeah.
world, because he's just burdened with this mountain of guilt that he is, associated with his life's work leading up to Iron Man 1, and that need to be involved in every conflict ultimately results in him becoming kind of a control freak, making a lot of mistakes, and he really has to learn his lesson about, you know, essentially removing his personal feelings from the incident, and let other people kind of lead the charge and come up with the plans, because sometimes he comes up with bad ideas and he's just too arrogant to see it,
Hmm.
and that's kind of a big lesson that he learns, especially throughout the Age of Ultron and like Civil War storylines. And
Yeah.
Jace doesn't really have anything like that, like he kind of just reacts to things in real time. He feels this way about a certain issue, then something happens, now he feels a totally different way about a thing. Then something else happens and he changes his mind about how he feels about it again. He just kind of reacts to the story as it happens, and he reacts appropriately for the most part, but it's just kind of like it doesn't feel like there's like like an underpinning that really ties it all together.
Yeah. Okay, I get you. Right. So we're gonna get to close to wrapping this thing up. So, one more character you want to discuss? Who do you
I mean,
feel we should have a?
I feel like the only other character that, if we're only gonna pick one, there's only one other character. Oh man, because it's like
No, it's not
we got
Jinx by any chance, is it?
it's like, well, there's Jinx and then there's Silco, and they're kind of intertwined.
I mean, we could do the pair of them as one unit.
Yeah, we could kind of talk about both of them if we wanted to.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been talking a lot in a row. Do you have
Right,
any
well,
thoughts you want to start us off with?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna start talking Jinx because I've already talked a little bit about Silco initially, and Jinx is one of those characters that I can truly understand where they were trying to come at in regards to the trauma and the experiences that Powder had received to become Jinx, and then the further development of Jinx to become Jinx. Because there's all this sort of idea that over 3 acts, even though we see Jinx within pretty much the first 5 minutes of Act 2, that's still not Jinx all the way through, and it's weird. And this is going to be a weird story to start with, but I yesterday watched the Get Jinx music video, and then afterwards watched the Wild Rift trailer, and they don't hit the same anymore. Of this sort of goofy, murderous character that Jinx was in the Get Jinx music video, which was her introduction to League of Legends, and this sort of goofy, troublemaker, wildcard, crazy Jinx. And oh no, I've said crazy quick, the YouTube comments are going to absolutely cripple me. But Jinx as a character is clearly designed as having a rough experience all the way through Arcane so far. Parents died, codependency issues, always needing to be pretty much with Vi at all times, or at least with Vander at all times, and to the point that she absolutely goes into a massive mental breakdown when neither of those parameters are met. Up to her, her defining episode 3 trait of looking to save the day and pretty much killing everyone in the process. And sort of getting dicked over by Vi, as we've already mentioned, was very hot-headed and sort of unlikable and that. And then
that's such a weird decision to make that part of her story. I just it makes me uncomfortable every time I think about it, and not in a good way. Like it's I don't know. It doesn't square up with me.
No, the sort of Jinx. And see, now the thing is that I've got is that sort of Jinx and her mannerisms through the remaining acts at that point made me feel uncomfortable, and I don't know if that was by design. If we were sort of looking on this thing, because like we say, burdened with prior League of Legends knowledge of her just being an anarchist, as opposed to what she is in Arcane, which is very deliberate in her sort of actions that she makes. Of all the cases,
and you could argue that this is like a matter of adaptation, where it's like not necessarily meant to be like the same character, quote unquote, like in the sense that like the forget actors' names. The Christian Bale Batman is not necessarily the same character as the one from
Ben Affleck
BVS.
Batman.
Ben Affleck Batman, like they're not necessarily
or the
like
George
the same
Clooney one. Yeah,
they have a lot of similarities in terms of the way they look and their mannerisms and their personal history, but they do have different opinions and views and methodologies. So it's like you could argue that like the Arcane Jinx and League of Legends Jinx are just not the same person necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's like, but again, it's like just because it's an adaptation doesn't mean it's like excused. Like
No.
character still has to work,
Yeah.
independently.
And Jinx does affect stuff, but not always in the way I was sort of expecting. I mean, let's be fair. The mental sort of conditions notwithstanding, and we'll mention it again. Clear PTSD from the opening minutes of the show. The dependency issues that appear on episode 3. Her, in both forms, both as she's been left by Vi twice, and with the fact that the first person she manages to latch onto is Silco, which makes that sort of dynamic also very sort of weird in this sort of twisted father-daughter relationship that's happening. It's a toxic relationship. It's not healthy in any way, shape, or form, and that comes along. At the same time, Jinx is does have flashes of her sort of goofy nature, particularly when she's tinkering to her own theme song.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of comes up, but her sort of whether Jinx was actually playing a long game on Silco and maybe exploiting him as much as he was exploiting her, because that was a thing. Let's be honest. We talked about their toxic dynamics. Silco knew how to push the right buttons to get Jinx back in line. It was the effectiveness, the efficacy of what he was doing was failing the further down the line this gone up to the point where she kills him through
Yeah.
intent or otherwise, which the scene on this, I know we kind of discussed it on Act 3, but we did get to a point that we got to the idea that Silco was aiming a gun while there was this battle of words going on between Silco and Vi towards Jinx. Silco aims a gun somewhere, which we've come to the conclusion he aims it towards Vi, yeah?
Yeah. If you pause at the right moment, you can see that he's clearly pointing the gun directly in front of him across the table. So when Vi is the only person in that direction, Jinx is well off to his right. There would be no way to mistake the angle.
Mm-hmm. And
So
which then suggests at that point that Jinx killed Silco out of reflex.
yeah, she's essentially defending Vi like instinctually.
Yeah,
She
instinct. That's the
really
one.
regrets that decision.
Yeah. Well, yeah, immediately after, and whew, I mean, she, like I said,
Also
makes
it's
deliberate
also like the
decisions.
first time that anybody has ever been like actually shot by like the machine gun.
Mm.
And it had to be a person who was literally tied to the chair.
Yeah.
uh,
Someone who was tied to Jinx, metaphorically and physically.
yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
just like at the end of the day, I just fundamentally cannot believe the relationship that they are in. I think all the visual metaphors and all the symbolism, it just doesn't work for me. I cannot get past the fact that this is essentially a relationship that is budded between a person who knows that who is aware that this person has essentially ruined her entire life, and a person who has just had all of his resources blown up by this person. Like these two people have just taken over the last 5 minutes have just ruined each other's lives and plans, and 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 now they're in a loving relationship, and I literally don't believe that, and that's fundamentally what makes it impossible for me to engage with them over the course of acts 2 and 3, because I cannot believe that this relationship can have started. Therefore, I can't get invested into this pseudo father-daughter relationship. It's just, it does not make sense to me. It does not follow to me that either of these characters would have this reaction to each other emotionally, intellectually, on any level. I don't know that I know enough about Silco as a character by the end of Act 3 that I would believe that he would adopt Jinx out of sincere affection, and I don't believe that Powder slash Jinx is enough of a fool or whatever that she would not be able to reconcile the disastrous effect that Silco's influence has had on her life.
Mm.
I it's like I it's like the only way the only way this works is if none of these characters know what they mean to each other on like a story level, and
Mm.
like they don't find out until later. But they don't. Like they both know what's up. Like Silco refers to Powder's sister, so he knows who she is.
Mm.
And she's the only other person around, so she must have been responsible for the explosion.
Yeah.
And I assume, I mean, Jinx literally saw him in the room where they were pounding away trying to kill Vi and the gang. So she knows what he's all about.
Yeah. You see this.
And so that's essentially where my engagement stops. Is I just can't get over that.
Mm. See, for me, I'm more forgiving of this idea if I take it onto the case that Silco, knowing all this, let's go on the idea, he knew that the only person around must have been the person who sorted out the bomb, Powder.
Mm-hmm.
But just as a I mean, this gives me a lot more sort of credit to Silco's motivations than he probably should be given credit for. But Powder at that point is a pawn to him. But then something, and this is the problem with imagination and leaving stuff unfinished. Obviously, in the intervening years, some sort
These
of
emotions must
relationship
have become more
has
sincere.
developed. Yeah,
And
and
wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be so wonderful if we could have like a character development appear in its own right on screen in an extended second season or whatever of watching Silco come to terms with the fact that he is no longer just taking advantage of Jinx and that he is actually unintentionally you know but still really uh, taking care of her, like in ways that go above and beyond just using her and manipulating her. Like actually standing up for her and going out of his way to increase her comfort or happiness.
mm,
Yeah, it would be interesting to see him develop that in real time. And
see, because at that point, that would have took that for me. That would have took Silco from an interesting from an interesting villain to a well-rounded and very interesting villain.
yeah, and in the other way you could do it too. You don't even have to do it like in like the learned methodology that we just described. You could just have that be a part of him from the beginning.
Yeah,
Let's create a hypothetical alternate universe here. So let's
fantasy
say
booking.
let's say we live in a world in which let's say Vander is like a rebel leader. He wants to start a revolution in Zon.
Yeah.
Silco is a big supporter of his. At first, Silco's got, I don't know, say like a 17, 18-year-old son or daughter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's an industrialist. Maybe he's got a wife and family in the past. He wants, whatever. And at some point during the war, family dies. Or even like Silco might even be like opposed to it, possibly. Like maybe he's not even like a supporter of Vanders. Maybe he's like okay with the fact that the world is the way it is because he's like one of like the few wealthy Zonites. Maybe he
Mm.
maybe this whole thing maybe he gets angry at Piltover uh, as it's just a matter of wanting vengeance.
Yeah.
But his hatred for Vander comes from the fact that he ended up getting his fucking kid killed in this big war. And so he has that sort of emotional core of like, there is a thing that's missing in his life, and that he fills that slot with with Jinx. And and you could even have that play into like his interactions with Deckard, where instead of just being some punk kid that he just exploits completely one-sidedly, maybe he's bringing Deckard in out of like he's being sort of paternal, and so like it's okay, Deckard, I wouldn't hurt you, I'm always looking out for you, how long have you been with me, how long, things have always been good so far, right? I feed you, I clothe you, I give you a place to live,
Hmm.
have that play in. And then when Deckard dies, it's like, all right, well, just slot Jinx in right there. And yeah, I mean, you could have it play out that way too. There's a lot of ways you could play this relationship in ways that make total sense. Like he does not have to be a good person. You can absolutely play the villain as just a character who, evil people are allowed to love things. The problem is like I just don't believe that he feels the way about Jinx that the writing is telling us that he feels about her. I just don't believe that. The way it just comes out is just not. I'm just not on board.
Hmm. Yeah. No, yeah, I actually want that. I mean, as I say, that would level him up. And
Yeah,
it's just
like I say,
that
it just
simple. It's
needs that.
just
Just needs that a little bit of extra depth. I just want to
yeah,
see that relationship bud.
yeah. I mean, it's a shame now because he's dead. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, it's a what could have been kind of thing. Like the show
yeah,
is what it is. Like we can't unwrite it.
yeah,
It's
I love
already
that.
made.
God, oh Jesus! I know that Sting and fucking Riot set that up by naming the last song of the series "What Could Have Been." Well,
And,
right,
but yeah, it's complicated. It's difficult. It's
right.
I
Fine.
had problems with season one, but that's who knows. Maybe they'll fix it.
Well, yeah, we've got 2 years to figure it out. Right, final score.
Final score. Oh boy, here we go. Um,
I mean, we spent all the past bits justifying it. Just go for it.
so like, if I don't know if I should be scoring this based on like, the what this kind of score I'd give to every category, or just my overall average score, because I feel so differently about different aspects of the show that it's hard to just give it a single finite number to really describe it. Because I think the world building is a good 7 out of 10. Like it's a solid world. It makes sense visually. It's pretty good. I like that. It's a very distinctive style. Like it's not you know
Hmm.
it doesn't look like somebody just slapped this together and fucking
Adobe After Effects.
or yeah, or what are those 3D animated programs they got?
Oh,
uh
I know what you mean.
what was the one they used for Ruby? I don't even know. uh
Oh God. Oh.
it's totally dropping my mind, but like yeah, it's definitely distinctive, and I'm happy with it. It's probably a good 8 out of 10 visuals.
Mm.
um Going up to a 9 in some scenes.
Poser was
Story,
the original thing for Ruby.
yeah. Um, and story is kind of weird because I just don't really understand what anybody a lot of times I just don't understand what people want at any given moment or why they want it.
Yeah.
Oh, my throat hurts so badly. I'm so glad this is finally over. Um, so like it's kind of like a 5 out of 10 story. It's like it's fine. Like it's not a total disaster, but there's a lot of big questions.
It's not the trash fire that a 5 that some people would insinuate. 5 is basically average.
Yeah, it's it's very serviceable. Is how I would describe the story.
Palatable.
Um,
I made that joke. I do have a takeout place down the road from me that is called palatable pizza, which basically means edible. Edible pizza, everyone.
oh yeah, that reminds me of there's a TikToker named B. Dylan Hollis
Mm.
who he does a lot of like vintage recipes from like 100-year-old cookbooks and stuff. And his favorite one on the back it says it's digestible.
It's
um,
digestible, which is basically what you're giving this show, really, aren't you?
it's
It's a digestible
digestible.
show.
Yeah, and as far as characters go, it's like aside from like one or two standouts of like Jace is mostly all right by the end of it. Jace is in a dangerous place because while I think Jace is fine, I think that if it ever becomes revealed what the fuck Victor has been up to, and Jace is not immediately horrified and does not immediately reject him on every level,
Mm.
or or at the very least like have a really significant reaction to that, then he's in a really dangerous place because Victor really got fucked in the last like couple episodes and like character wise.
Mm.
We don't even have time to talk about everything that's wrong with Victor as of the end of Act 3.
X-Tech Core
Um,
MVP of the series. No, no,
um,
no, no. Well, I
play of
mean,
the game.
we could quickly
Uh,
talk about Sky. Right, we talked about her. Anyway,
I don't really want to.
no,
I
don't
don't.
worry about it. Don't worry about it. No.
But anyway, it's like they're in danger. But aside from a couple of standouts, a lot of the characters are very confusing. And it's not well fleshed out because of the rushed pacing of the show.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I give characters like a 3 or 4 out of 10. It's pretty bad. And depending, and if you took all those numbers and you just put them into like just a mean average calculator, you'd come up with something somewhere in like the range of like a 6 out of 10.
Mhm.
And whether or not that actually follows through really depends on how heavily you weight certain elements of the story. And I've made it pretty clear throughout all of these reviews that I ascribe a significant amount of weight on plot and character. It's pretty much the thing I'm mostly focused on. Like between those two, I would say that there's probably about an 80% weight.
Mm.
Like it's probably like somewhere in the realm of like 50-30 in terms of like character and plot, I would say. And then the rest is very like, yeah, I care about whether it looks like shit or if it looks, or if it looks good. I care if the music is like uh, fitting or if it stands out as strange or distracting. I care about those things, but I don't care about them particularly all that much.
Mm.
At the end of the day, books exist. You can tell a pretty compelling story using just text. That's probably why the storytelling elements are so important to me.
Mm.
The visuals is just like you can save a whole lot of money and time on all those other elements by just committing it to text. Not that that's like an argument. I don't even know what the point of what I'm just saying is. The point is I care about the storytelling elements more than anything,
Mm.
and I would have to say that despite the mean the unweighted mean giving me like a 6 out of 10, I would say that my adjusted weighted mean would bring me down to like somewhere between a 4 and 5 out of 10 on Arcane Season 1.
Mm.
Um,
So,
so that's my long-winded way of saying I thought Arcane was not great, not total trash fire, but a lot of problems, and I have literally injured myself talking about all of them. So, Ryan, what is your rating of Arcane Season 1?
So,
You don't have to spend 20
I,
minutes
I,
like I
I
did.
am a lot more forgiving of this.
I know.
And I just need to make sure I say that and make it clear to all those who think this is two people absolutely trash firing a show. It's not.
Ryan is
Neither of
trying
us.
to
Neither.
appeal to the
No,
to
no.
the
I honestly no. I
listeners.
think I've made this clear in my dodgy YouTube comment response. I couldn't give a shit about what anyone else thinks as long as you portray me in the correct way. I am a lot more forgiving of the show because I'm looking at it as a whole package sort of affair. And I mentioned sort of early on in the stream, I've softened Act 3. Not enough to change it from the score that it was, but I've softened and now can actually sort of understand where I am. Overall, I would give this a 7 out of 10 in regards to it, because I feel all components are, I mean, there's the weighting of story opposed to sort of animation and soundtrack and stuff like that, but I'm on a sort of an idea that all of this needs to be there for me, and it's the problem of stuff, particularly story, and the fact that the issues with stories was so glaring that it drops the overall opinion of the show down, in spite of the gorgeous other parts of the production. But not, for me, these are flaws that are easily rectifiable. It's, that I mean, that maybe that's just my optimism and hope in regards to this. The
I don't.
stuff in there is
I think that
rectifiable. It's not something that could have been, that's done here, and these are harsh lessons that probably would have got learnt for other people.
It's like I think that a lot of the problems could have been solved during the writing process. It's like I've made it pretty clear that like there are so many problems with the writing that could have been changed with very, very minor edits. One more scene, one less scene, a change of phrasing or wording, and it's just like boom, you've dramatically improved the story. So it's like,
Yeah.
I think maybe these are things that should have just been reviewed a little bit more, but carry on.
But they have been now, and surely you'd be hoping at that point, providing you've not just got absolute sycophants just going, hey, perfect. Why? Because it's got Jinx in it. That doesn't make it perfect. Actually have flaws, and if you've got flaws, as long as they're pointed out and you're constructive about it, they can be improved. And I see no problems with the fact that Riot can improve on this, mainly due to the fact that just purely of the way that Riot Games, the company, works in regards to its product. They're never happy. Personally. And I take that into account of all the stuff that, yes, they're never happy, and let's not talk about let's have the massive elephant in the room in regards to Riot, the game dev company's attitude to to other stuff. It'd be in a miss if we didn't talk about Riot's internal problems. But most of this show wasn't made by Riot. It was made by Fortiche. And that's sort of where I want to go on in regards to that. And believe me, abuse that's happened in the video game companies, we've talked about it enough on our own other streams and podcasts and stuff like that to know that that's not on and it needs to be sorted. But art and artist is something I still want to separate for. But I'm rambling at this point. What I'm trying to say is it's a good show marred by.
It is important to separate, product from producer for the purpose of criticism. You can absolutely criticize a company on its own terms in the way that people want to. As far as
we
I'm
have done.
concerned, I could care less. For the purposes of this critique, I could care less about what's going on at Riot Games HQ. That's not because I don't care about the problems that are going on. They just are not relevant to this conversation.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and if we want to put it into this, and we make if anyone's seen this and they don't see the rest of our stuff, we make a whole point of doing a feature on our podcast called "What the Fuck Blizzard," which talks about the heavily increasing tire fire that is the day-to-day operations of Activision Blizzard. And people could probably go, well, hold on, Ryan, you turned around and said you don't like World of Warcraft anymore and you don't play it, blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, well, that's not because of the raging trash fire at Blizzard. It's because of the poor game design and consistent running of a live service that Blizzard is performing with World of Warcraft. Don't put them together.
Yeah.
It hasn't helped, but that's not the reason that I'm not playing Blizzard games anymore. They've just ran their time. And it's in the same way I could still play Riot stuff and enjoy Riot content, but still know that internally there's stuff that needs fucking fixing.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to take that into an idea, we're looking at Arcane, the series here at that point.
Yes.
But yeah, no, for me, as a whole product, a 7 out of 10 for me. Much room for improvement. Come see me after class, please. But next semester, we should have you shipshape ready to go. Dear God, please hope that's the case. I don't want Arcane Season 2 to just, Arcane Season 1 to have just shot its load as the limited series that it should have been. Yeah, I guess that's another thing on there, but I think I discussed that at the end of Act 3. It's clear that Riot had a multi-season project for it. Netflix fucked it up by saying it was an event series and it was a limited series, and oh no, look, by the powers combined, we've decided that our one series project is now 2 series. That's a whole different story there as well, though.
Yeah, I couldn't have. Like I say, I can't emphasize enough how much of my problems could be fixed by just taking more time. It's just like I feel like we've just been watching like a highlight reels of a better story when going through Arcane Season 1. I just feel like we're just sort of like jumping to all like the important bits, and I feel like there's just not enough there, and I just feel like the format kind of hurt it.
See, like I said, I'd be sort of interested to see whether the whole act structure was Riot's design or Netflix's design, but I guess we could ask. And that's so it screams Netflix experiment, but 6-year production cycle, 1 year of that was delayed, so fucking COVID. But 2 years, we can see if our hope is there or if it's just being shot down. I'm
gonna need 2 years. I gotta be honest with you. I really need to. I need to take a break from Arcane and come back to have a chance to forget about everything that happened and
fresh face.
Get a reminder, go and then watch the second one, mostly fresh, and be like, all right, what you got in for us this time, guys?
Yeah, and if we see Garen in the first scene, by the way, I'm out.
Whatever.
Anyway, right, we should probably wrap this up, didn't we? We said we're going to go for an hour or so. I guess 58 minutes over an hour is still or so.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it wasn't good. I knew it was going to be more than an hour. I knew that. But
it's not 4. So
well, yeah, and it's worth noting. A lot of the stuff, especially on the character front, really streamlines down. There's a lot more that could have been said, but I've got other things to do. Unfortunately,
we were on a final thoughts idea, so that's just sort of where we were. Right, I guess at that point we're going to say that we're out. So
yeah, that's it.
So
no more.
Until 2 years' time, or until another video game based project that someone else wants to get us on does something. That's Immaterial Gamers Reviews for now. Like, share, subscribe, and all that if you're seeing this on the YouTube. and just give us a
Follow
comment
us
again.
on
The social medias.
Twitch and
Yeah.
watch our stuff.
Yeah, follow us on
We
Twitch and
stream
watch all
a
our
lot.
streams where we end up being the enthusiastic people, you know, that we're on, because at that point we're in control of the games that we play, and therefore we play what we enjoy.
Yeah, I don't usually sound like I'm on the verge of death. That's usually only Arcane. I'm usually pretty enthusiastic and
or,
happy in
or,
these
or,
things.
or Spooktober, when you're having to constantly worry about a baby chest,
Oh yeah, baby cat, baby
baby cabinet,
cabinet, it's cabinet baby. But yeah,
cabinet
it's
baby. That was it. Yeah. But
yeah.
yeah. So we do all that, and please leave comments and be constructive. That's we're happy to have the conversation, as long as it's a conversation that isn't just born out of complete and utter hatred. It's as simple as.
All
Yeah.
right.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I'm yeah, I'm going to stop our recording. Baby bucket. Oh God, no, Steph. He always has to get the last word in. Well, I'm getting the last word. Right, we out. See you later. Enjoy yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.